There is another aspect of this which I find interesting, and I'd be interested in your views as well, Gerald. And that is portfolio ownership of gold is less than 1%. All the gold that seems to be owned by people is actually owned outside regular portfolios and things like that. And everybody I come across, apart from just a few enlightened souls, don't understand gold. They don't want to deal in gold. They have been educated in something called modern portfolio theory, which classes it as a risk asset. And it seems to me that they've got the whole thing somewhat upside down. Have you any views on that in terms of the way portfolio managers look at these things?
A dear friend of mine.
Are they repeatable?
A good friend of mine, Thomas Naylor. He's a professor emeritus at Duke University.
Yes.
Taught there for 30 years economics.
Mm-hmm.
He's also doing now, he's the head of the secessionist movement in Vermont.
Oh, really?
Yeah, he's a great guy.
Yes.
And he was saying how, now remember, this is a professor emeritus at Duke University economics.
Yes.
You were not allowed to talk about gold, he said, in the 30 years I was teaching there.
Yeah.
And he attributes, in 2002, he was subscribing to the Trends Journal. He took his whole portfolio and put it into gold. So he's very happy today.
Good.
Gold, and if you go back, and I know because I've been yelling gold forever, they call you a gloom and doomer. They call you a gold bug.
Yes.
They make up these stupid, childish names. I mean, let's look at the mentality of the financial industry when you hear their language. You know, it's I love it when everything was just right. They call it a Goldilocks economy.
Yes, they do.
It's a fairy tale.
Yeah, yeah.
So what they don't like to hear, and that people need to understand, is they don't make that kind of money when they sell you gold as they are when they're selling these structures.
Absolutely. And from 2 points of view, I mean, firstly, there is less they can actually do with selling physical in terms of taking money off you in different directions. But the other thing is that when people buy gold, they tend to sit on it.
That's right.
And it's gone out of their system,
That's
effectively.
right. You know, in life you have ups and downs. And I've had my downs. I had a big downturn in 2003 because I made the mistake of forecasting 9/11. It was in USA Today.
Yes.
December 14th, 2000. The headline read, 2001 won't be our year, Trendseer says. And I warned the Americans they wouldn't be safe at home or abroad.
Mm.
And I've been warning about a wave of anti-terrorism. Now, I know there are people there that think it's an inside job, but regardless of that, the World Trade Centers came down to the ground and the Pentagon was whacked.
Yes.
However it happened, it happened.
Yes.
Well, immediately I started getting flooded with calls all around the world, FT, all over.
Yes.
I had forecast this.
Yeah.
Why did it happen? Why did it happen? It's called foreign policy.
Indeed.
No. They hate our freedom and liberty, and you, Mr. Salenti, you're unpatriotic.
Yeah, yeah. Yes, I get the point.
I used to be on Oprah. I used to be on the Today Show, CNN, ABC, Good Morning America. All of a sudden, one by one,
They started,
and then I made the second mistake. I said, this Afghan war, there's no end in sight. If Alexander the Great couldn't pull this off, if the British and the Russians couldn't do it, you're not going to win this thing. This thing's going to go on forever.
That I find fascinating because the Chinese are just sitting there on the sidelines, rubbing their hands, just waiting the opportunity. In fact, they're already in there.
They're already in, getting those.
Yeah, and they will get all the resources.
Yeah. So that was mistake number two. Then the Iraq war happens.
Yes.
And I said, he doesn't have, I'm following the data. There is not evidence that he has weapons of mass destruction and ties to Al-Qaeda. There'll be no winning solution here.
Yeah.
Again, it'll be another one. So now I become unpopular for a while. And my fortunes go down. Do you know what saved me?
Do tell.
Gold.
Excellent.
And here's why. I had gold, like you mentioned before. When you buy gold, you don't tend to sell it.
Yeah.
It's not easy to sell it. When you sell it, you'll take a loss on it anyway.
Yeah.
So, and you have to go through steps. So unlike having money in the bank where you just write a check and the money flies away, when you have that bar of gold or those coins, they don't dispose of that easily.
No.
And you also, there's a connection there. What I used to do is I go to friends and I say, listen, I need $20,000. And they're friends,
Yes.
and you don't want to ask a friend to loan you money without collateral. And I say, here's the deal. You could hold $20,000 worth of gold.
Right.
And we'll sign the papers that in 2 years, if the price of gold is less than what you loaned it to me, when you loaned me the money, I'll pay you the difference. If I can't pay you back, and the price of gold is worth more, you keep the difference.
Right.
And in 2 years, if I can pay you back, you have to give it back to me. Oh yeah, you're my pal. The interest now, interest. They got the gold.
Yes, yes.
I bought back all the gold.
Yeah. Oh, I think it's a lovely story, but it does actually indicate what gold is all about.
Exactly.
It's about a store of value.
Exactly.
Which, of course, paper currency cannot be.
Exactly. So that's what it was. And then things turned around when I forecast, of course, the panic of 2008 and 2007 and all the other forecasts. And I couldn't be ignored anymore. And they realizing that the wars are losing things, so I started getting back into the media. And my fortunes, knock on wood and spit, as they say, turned around. But that's what was a story, another story of the value of gold.
Yes.
And what it did for me personally.
Well, I think that's a lovely story, Gerald. Now, how about silver, which is I find a fascinating thing. It's a lot more volatile. It, compared to its historic relationship of 15 and a half to 1 gold, it's something like, 45 to 50. So on that long-term basis, it's very, very undervalued. Do you think that's ever going to change and catch up?
I don't know as much about silver as I do about gold. I followed gold virtually every day since 1978.
Right.
And I really have a good feeling, I believe, in a sense. And by the way, also talking about the bubble, this is a different... I mentioned to you, I parlayed, by the way, at $5,000 in 1978 when I started buying. And in those days, almost to $750,000. I was a guy 30 years old, just doing this, not knowing what I was doing. But having said that, I also bought gold at the highest trading point of the day at $875, and ended up losing about 2/3 of what I had.
Yes, indeed.
So, it's the learning process.
Of course.
That emotion that existed back then when gold collapsed is not the same emotion that exists today.
No,
it's totally different. Anybody that's been there that knows it, it's different.
Yes.
And feelings count for me, especially being Italian, passione.
Yes.
So that emotion is different. So I know a lot more about gold, but having said that, I buy silver in the event the governments do something. And although I don't believe they're going to be successful in the long term, to restrict the sale and the ownership of gold. I mean, after all, they've done it before.
They did it before.
They can do it again.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So I use silver as my hedge against that.
It's funny you mentioned this, because I was thinking about this in a slightly different context, really in the context of the apparent stupidity of politicians. They're rarely driven, I think, by political need rather than common sense. And if people are seen to be doing very well out of gold, it's quite possible that there may be pressures brought back on them to restrict people's buying and selling in gold in exactly the same way as the European politicians at this moment are trying to stop the markets operating against them in financial derivatives.
Exactly. And look what they stopped short selling at banks.
Yes, yes.
They just change the rules and make them up.
Now, what I can't work out in this is whether the politicians are so genuinely uneducated about financial matters that they don't understand what they're doing, or despite the fact they might be educated about financial matters, they have to do it as a matter of political expediency.
I believe it's political expediency. They have to keep the game going.